Anyway, the last of the people we're going to talk to today, hear from today, is Daniel Crooks, who has been up to all kinds of wicked, amazing stuff in Australia, where none of us were looking. He has made some huge breakthroughs, and it's almost impossible to see this stuff in the United States because they don't show the videos on YouTube or Vimeo, and at the end of the day today, you can all yell at him for not doing that. But you're lucky to be here because you'll get to see what he's up to, and he'll explain it for you. Mr. Crooks.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for coming, and special thanks to Ren and to the DeYoung Museum for having me here. It's my first time in San Francisco, and very excited to be here. The spiritual home of Edward Muybridge. Yeah, one of the things I actually wanted to do when I was here was try and find the spot where he took his famous panorama from, or possibly didn't. But I was kind of absolutely blown away to find it was actually directly across the street from my hotel. So yeah, it was very, very exciting times for me. So today I'm just going to talk very briefly about some of my work, and I think where it touches on some of these kind of optical and perceptual ideas that we've been talking about, and also sort of bring some of my own kind of Muybridgian pseudoscience to bear. How's this going to work? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to go right back to the very beginning, very briefly. Bear with me for a sec. I actually originally studied film and animation. Now is this going to go? Let's play. So I was making these very kind of gritty Eastern European black and white films, sort of inspired by the likes of Jan Schwankmeyer and the brothers Quay. This is 1994, so this is my student film called Food for Thought, 3 ingredients from the mass consumer diet. And I'll just jump forward a bit here. So you might be able to tell that kind of during the production of this film, I became very attached to the photocopying machine. I'd experimented a little bit with flatbed scanners, but the photocopier is so kind of instant in its feedback. And this is where I really started thinking a lot about this idea of scanning, of gathering spatial information as a sequence as opposed to as an instantaneous moment or as a photograph. So yeah, lots of photocopies. I've got boxes and boxes of photocopies in my studio still. Around this time, I also did these kind of experiments with a handheld scanner. This is actually a scanner that my dad had and he used for scanning business cards. And it was like a little handheld thing with a roller on the bottom, and you'd roll it across backwards and forwards, and it had this most exquisite sort of design fault, and that even though the scan would keep going forwards, you could actually roll it backwards and forwards so that you could flip space backwards and forwards, which was kind of crazy. Here's another one. You can see, yeah, so I'm just sort of holding it up with a ruler and sort of making these crazy portraits, but twisting my head. And this, of course, led, all these sort of experiments led several years later to this series of photographs. Oh, that's very dark. Okay, you have to bear with me there. So these are these very long, sort of 3-meter long photographs, and they're all taken with a video camera. I'll go so you can see a bit. Wow, that is really dark.
Maybe turn down the light a little bit.
Yeah. Really dark. Okay, we'll just have to imagine here for a bit. So kind of like the scanner or a flatbed scanner, what I was doing is, so I'm strapping the camera to the side of a train and effectively turning the train into a giant flatbed scanner. And so taking a single row of pixels out of that video frame and then splaying them across the field. And of course, this had to lead to a video. is a three-channel video. And this was, this is sort of circa 2000 and, I think 2001, 2001. Oh, it's called Train Number One. Good solid title. And this was a real kind of revelation for me at the time, but sort of in hindsight, it is no coincidence that these sort of first experiments came out of trains. I mean, cinema has been obsessed from the very beginning with the train, and you know, it's also, the train is very kind of linked into our understanding of time. I mean, any kind of pop science description of relativity always invokes the train, and yeah, even the idea of standardized time zones comes directly out of the train. So I mean, it wasn't a conscious thing at the time, but very much in hindsight, there's a kind of a key link there. So as I was sort of developing these techniques of breaking up the moving image, I'll just turn this down a little bit. Yeah, I started becoming very interested in the idea of post-camera, what I call post-camera imaging at the time. I guess you'd call it computational imaging now. But this idea of moving away from traditional monocular perspective into these kind of polyocular visions. And this is the first of my kind of Muybridgian pseudoscience term coinings. You can see that there's a kind of out from the train, there's a plane where everything kind of coheres properly, like the slices actually join up properly. And I call that the plane of cohesion. So if there are any academics in the audience, we've got to try and get that into some papers. But it's sort of like it's kind of like a sort of depth of field that also includes time and motion. And so anything that's in front of that plane becomes very cut up and truncated, and anything that's behind that plane becomes very kind of smeared out. So it's this crazy kind of, it's kind of like a temporal depth of field. Now, I'll come back to my my term coinings a little bit later. So this is another work sort of exploring this idea of taking a slice out of the frame. I'll turn that up a little bit again. So again, what's happening here is taking a very thin slice out of the center of the video. This is was shot in London in 2005. This is just people walking, it's pedestrian traffic, and offsetting each slice by, in this case, 4 or 5 frames. So if you kind of cover your eyes, you can actually see it's just like a tiny little thin movie that's playing in real time, but the amalgam of them all becomes this kind of meta-organism, these sort of temporal tendrils. And of course, everyone sort of spots out the DNA kind of legs, something like the DNA, our internal DNA representing itself in the bigger world. I guess this sort of, at the heart of my practice is this idea of trying to look at time as a physical substance, as a material. So trying to think of it in a very kind of physical, material terms, and then looking at it in very kind of malleable, almost, I hesitate to use the word sculptural, but looking at it in a very physical way. I think one other thing just to talk about quickly here is that these aren't edited in a filmic sense. There's no cutting or, obviously they're very sliced up, but it's just a single moment. It's very much like that kind of Lumiere moment, just a single slice of life moment, but just looked at from a different angle. So I've kind of just like with a shifted lens. Running out of time. Okay. So speaking of topological objects, he says, this is a video from 2007, and it was a video that I made. It was a series of videos and photos that I call imaginary objects, and imaginary objects as in imaginary numbers. So they're temporal objects, and they don't exist in the real world, though it's surprising the number of people that ask me to see them. I was like, wow, I really want to see the real thing. It's like, no, it doesn't exist. But I guess it kind of does exist. I mean, this is just another way of looking at something that really does exist. So just very quickly, what I've done here is these are just very kind of mundane objects lying around my studio, which I put on a turntable, a very slowly moving turntable. I build these sort of strange little robotic devices. And then again, just taking one pixel slice out of the middle and spreading them up. And so you get this transposition. You're swapping out the vertical dimension for the temporal. So they become these, temporal objects. So you're just looking at it from the side. I think this is just a piece of scrunched up paper. I do kind of like that impressionist idea that, the little points of light might actually be purple and green. I kind of like that the little points in that scrunched up piece of paper do look like milk or silk or marble. Okay, and then I'm going to jump forward a little bit. This is a video I made in 2010 called Static Number 12, Seek Stillness in Motion. So this was shot in Shanghai in 2009, and I was actually in this park shooting big groups of people doing Tai Chi for another project, and stumbled across this guy, this beautiful old man, completely doing his own thing. And so I just literally just plonked the camera down, and I think I was fully expecting him to kind of wave us away or stop, but he was fully in the zone. He kind of knew we were there, but he was cool with it. And when I got back to the studio, I'd worked on another piece a little bit, or the year before. I'd tried opening up this kind of temporal chasm, and when I got back to the studio, I started looking. I don't practice Tai Chi. I wasn't that up on Tai Chi, and started looking into it. And one of the dictums of Tai Chi, the 10th sort of commandment, is to seek stillness and movement. And that kind of just was like, oh wow, that's amazing. I'm sort of trying to open out these still kind of temporal beings inside the movement. And it was quite a magical sort of moment actually. And then spent a long time trying to make it happen. Well, they're growing, that's the thing. They start off together but the edges I think are about a minute and a half. So, I'll just jump forward quickly now. Let this one go? Okay, you gotta see the end. It has a great ending. So now I'm just going to quickly jump back to squeeze in a bit of one last optoperceptual term coining. This is kind of like the inverted sibling of the first one I mentioned. I'm actually a little bit sad Margaret's not here to see this. I think she might have liked this one. So this is, we're jumping back here to 2005, but this is shot in London on the Silver Line, which is an old elevated train line. I just wanted to, I'll just quickly, it sort of appears, but this is, so what's happening here is instead of a single slice out of the middle of the frame, the slices are still in the same place, but they're still being offset from each other. But the slice, the time offset between the slices is in the opposite direction to the way that the train's moving. And so what happens is the things that are in the foreground are actually going backwards in time. Things in the background are going the right way in time, but they obviously have to get to each other at some point. And so you have to cross this kind of plane, again, just out from the camera, which I call the plane of infinite expansion. You gotta give me some leeway here. This was 10 years ago, so kind of slightly cheesy titles, but again, if there's any academics here, help me out here. Yeah, so I love these moments. It's kind of weirdly inverse perspective. It's like the infinite vanishing points are sitting on that plane. Okay, and then just lastly, I just very quickly, in reference to Mr. David Hockney's 9-channel Cubist movies, I just thought I'd throw this in. This is a crazy camera rig I built a few years ago with 7 cameras, and I was driving around. It was a hilarious number of people who really didn't think, thought I couldn't walk. It's like, you were right, It's like, no, I'm not even sitting on this properly. And I used that to make this movie here. So this is, again, a 7-channel, shown on 7 plasma screens in portrait mode. So I'd made a couple of works like this before with the single channel, but I was always seeing what was going off the side of the frame, and I was like, God, I want to keep seeing what's happening. Where did that person go? Where did they squiggle off to? And so this gave me the opportunity to really widen that perspective and sort of see what's happening. There's a few sort of parallactic errors, but I'll forget those. Trembling along. Okay, for that. And then lastly, I'm just going to put in a plug here for Zbigniew Rybczynski, who is a Polish filmmaker who I still, to this day, I think made the greatest multi-channel video of all time. This is a 35mm film called New Book, made in 1975. And in terms of interlocking multi-channel narratives, you've got to check this out if you haven't already seen it. It's called New Book. New Book? Yeah, he made Tango, which won the Oscar in whenever, which is like just one of the greatest movies ever made. But this is phenomenal in terms of I think it's about 8 or 9 minutes long, and all the action is totally interlocking. Like you're on the bus, and then you see the bus go past, and then it's phenomenal. So it's just my little plug for Zbigniew, legend. Okay, and then lastly, I'll just leave you with something. I thought I should finish with something that's a little bit more recent. And so I actually only finished this 4 days ago, so that's pretty recent. And it opened in Melbourne the night before last. So and it's something of a departure from what I've just been showing, but I think it still has a wide perspective, looking across time and looking across space. And what I'm sort of the core of some of my project is this idea of trying to join discontinuities into new and viable wholes. This is called an embroidery of voids. Thank you.